Hi, I'm Norman Locke, and I'm going to read something that was published by John Madeira in his Big Other on June the 3rd of last year, an excerpt from this book, Tooth of the Covenant, which was published last July 2021 by Bellevue Literary Press, which has been bringing out annually a series of what I've been calling the American Novels series. This being the eighth standalone volume. The next volume, which concerns Walt Whitman and Louisa May Alcott in wartime Washington, Civil War time Washington, where they both nursed at the hospitals in Georgetown and Washington, D.C. That book is called Voices in the Dead House. This book concerns, and you may have discovered in your readings in American literature concerning Nathaniel Hawthorne, his great-great-grandfather was a magistrate during the Salem witch trials. In fact, he was the only one of the magistrates and justices in Salem, in Massachusetts, who refused even at the end of his life to recant or to express regret for the many sentences that he handed down, many of them resulting in executions. So, in this novel, I imagine Hawthorne in 1851 inventing a story, a fiction called The Tooth of the Covenant, in which he sends a fictional surrogate, Isaac Page by name, back through the marvelous machineries of fiction, back into Salem, 1692, to stop his great-great-grandfather, Hawthorne, from sentencing to death the first of the witches, Bridget Bishop, who swung on the gallows for witchcraft. "You look tired and worn, Isaac Page," said Enoch kindly. And Isaac thought that there could not be two more dissimilar brothers in New England than Enoch and Matthew Rhodes. He considered telling Enoch his own extraordinary tale, and by it pull the thorn stuck in the tender flesh of his brain, his heart, or that undiscovered organ where guilt and sin are lodged. He stopped short of admitting to a journey through time as perilous as Hannibal's crossing the Alps, Cain's flight from Eden to the land of Nod, or, to speak presumptuously, Christ's dire passage from the Mount of Olives to Calvary. Isaac knew that he was alone in the new world of 1692, and sensed that he ought not relax his vigilance. "It's a short walk to the gallows," he told himself, and for the first time in his exile he felt at risk of the executioner's expertly knotted rope. "Does your brother truly believe you're mad?" Isaac asked his host, Enoch Rhodes. "It gives him satisfaction to hear that I send my spirit out to torment the magistrates, though no spirit of mine flies across the sound to kick Hawthorne and Corwin in their pompous asses. I pray they will feel the scorch of my ire. Ill will can do as much harm as spectres when it be hot. Mine is piping. I tell you, Isaac, that there be many mad folks in Salem whose brains are boiling in resentment." Having his own cowardice in mind, Isaac said, "You do more than I." "I've done nothing," said Enoch, "except to leave a paper curse for tyrants to find. I should have nailed my theses and my challenge to the meeting-house door. The intolerance of God's people in Massachusetts is a wonder to me, since they themselves were persecuted in the Old World. I've heard it said that John Hawthorne is not necessarily an evil man, though he does Evil things, said Isaac, canvassing still another person in the matter of his ancestor. Evil things are done by evil men. Or do you think, as I have heard said, that a kind of plague has turned men's wits against themselves and their neighbors? You might as well blame it on the flour with which they make their bread. To say that Goodwife Tomlin split her husband's skull with a felling axe because he complained his roast meat was raw, or that the Reverend Crisps should be forgiven for beating his slave because his worry over other men's souls had made him irritable. These be feeble defenses, Isaac Page. Some say the hostiles have made every man fear his neighbor, said Isaac doggedly, trying to justify the evil that men do to salve his pricking conscience, which had been lately insisting that he carry out his purpose in coming to Salem in 1692 to stop his great-great-grandfather, John Hawthorne, from uh, beginning the witch trials and executions with that of Bridget Bishop. To justify the evil that men do to salve his pricking conscience, which had been lately insisting that he carry out his purpose and return to the family he had all but forgotten. There will be those who blame the Indians until the day comes when there are no more Indians. Then they will turn against their Negro slaves. Isaac had seen the same fierce glint in Enoch's eyes in those of evangelists in the 1830s during the Second Great Awakening in New England, as well as in Methodist camp meetings in the burned-out districts of New York after the fires of revivalism had swept through them. I don't doubt your sanity, said Isaac as he filled an earthenware cup with strong water poured from a squat green bottle. But I do the wisdom of such an outspoken airing of belief to me, a stranger. Why, are you one of Hawthorne's or Corwin's men? Are you a deputy, an officer of the court, or a witch hunter? To each Isaac answered, Nay. Then why must I be wise? New England is filled to the hawse-pipe with such wisdom as makes cowards of us all. You know the play? Asked Isaac Page. Hamlet, it's the book and gospel for those who prefer doubt to the overweening vanity of conviction. It teaches us to hesitate, said Isaac. I'd rather hesitate to imprison a child, hang a man or a woman, confiscate the person's property, and deny the survivors an inheritance. In this age of unshakable belief, hesitation is strength and not weakness. Who is Hamlet if not a man who cannot accept spectral evidence? Isaac grew quiet as he ran his finger around the rim of his cup. What brings you here, Isaac Page? Enoch's question broke the spell cast by Isaac's revolving finger. By here, did Enoch mean Tinker's Island, or the New World of 1692? Curiosity, he replied evasively. About the letter in the ivory casket and its author? Aye, and what your brother had to say about you. Matthew means well, though he can be prickly. Isaac helped himself to more brandy as Enoch continued. During the 1640s, when the king's neck ought to have itched in anticipation of the axe which, at the end of the decade, fell at the people's pleasure, the English Puritans held a majority in Parliament, no longer hunted and oppressed, the nonconformists ceased their exodus to New England. The Great Migration ended. With no new planters to buy their clapboards, cattle, corn, and fish, economic necessity obliged the colonists to sell Massachusetts cod to the Roman Catholics of Spain, whom they detested in principle. Dearth, it seems, can compel even saints to do business with the devil. Your point being? Enoch shrugged. The thought was in the air, and I plucked at it. Isaac put down his cup. He rubbed his eyes and moaned, What's the matter, Isaac? My eyes, I can't see clearly. The fault Of ardent spirits or of a new thought, said Enoch slyly. Let's see what abominations Matthew has caught for our supper, he said, rubbing his hands in anticipation. The two men left the house and walked toward the inlet. The ocean noise grew louder as the dense woods standing between them and the shore thinned. When they stood face to face with the Atlantic, waves came clashing on the shingle. Enoch and Isaac watched Matthew haul the remains of an ox head from the water and onto the gravel beach. Rags of pale gray flesh waved obscenely in the churning water, and to Isaac's horror black rivulets of eels poured from the mouth, neck, and eye sockets of the beast's ruined head. It might have belonged to Moloch, the Canaanites' god of child sacrifice. The eels squirmed madly, each naked body tracing the letter S against white and yellow pebbles, which hissed as though to give voice to beasts. Deftly Matthew gathered them into a barrel, partly filled with sea water and seaweed. Joseph stood impassively. Enoch gazed on the scene benevolently, and Isaac retched. So violent was his upheaval it could have raised the bloated corpses of those who had sailed from England in high hopes only to drown, or dug from a dismal fen the ancient key that had locked the gates to paradise. He vomited, as if he would be rid of the last particle of humanity and henceforth be a stone. Isaac wondered at how plainly he could see the grisly, monstrous form of Moloch, whole and entire, while the other men remarked only on the eels. "We shall dine royally," crowed Matthew, as he banged the barrel-lid shut with the heel of his hand. Thank you.